Lisa, welcome to Millionaire University. I am so delighted to have you here today. I feel like angels, choirs are singing as we talked about what you're going to share with our audience today, because I'm like, from where I sit, give me all of that value. You have so much to offer, and I'm so stoked that you're here to share some of that with our audience. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about a few things, the art of pitching, mindset of pitching, but I want to hear your story as an entrepreneur first. So give us the lay of the land, who you are and how you've gotten to where you are right now.
Yeah. So a few years ago, I found myself in a position where I was postpartum with my first and only child and facing a layoff. And I had moved cross country in this position, and they were so gracious enough to let me work remote so I could live near my family who I hadn't been next to for almost 2 decades. I grew up in New Orleans, moved to New York, went to school, all that, and I was there for almost 20 years. And then I wanted to move back and have my baby and be close to my parents and my brothers and all that stuff. But I found myself painted into a corner, knowing that the company was cutting budgets and all of that, and the writing was on the wall. And I was stuck professionally. I had no idea where to turn, what to do. I had gotten my degree in English so long ago, but in the meantime, I had a very typical like New York City kind of artist life where I did everything. I babysat, I watched kids, dogs, cats, personal assistant, executive assistant, event management, all kinds of stuff and everything in between. So I was feeling kind of lost and wondering if I would have to go back to school, incur a whole lot of debt. And of course, in the meantime, the algorithm's feeding me like, oh, well, if you just invest this much money in my drop shipping course or whatever. And I'm, kind of
We've
like,
all been there.
yeah, yeah, chasing after every shiny thing, like what's going to answer it, what's going to answer it. And I had a real dark night of the soul. And I remember breaking down in the barn where we live in a rural area, crying to my dad, saying, I wish I would have gone to law school like he urged me to do so many years
Mm.
ago.
Now
Even
it
though I
felt like
had,
the safer bet, like even though at the time that was definitely not the right path, it's like you find yourself in that unsafe moment where you don't know what the future holds and
yeah,
it feels so unstable. So you're literally wanting to go back to the only time things might have felt a little certain.
yeah.
But yeah, continue on. I think we all do that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And well, I had no model for what a path forward would look like without a significant amount of time and money investment. But luckily, I heard a whisper. I'm like, was it like a psychotic break postpartum? Like, whatever. I don't know. I don't question it. But I just heard something that said copywriting. And I had been on an email list for a course for many years, but I never really believed that it was even possible that people could earn money in that way remotely and all of that. So I dug into that course further, eventually took the leap, did the thing. But the thing that made it the most successful for me, because I hadn't yet gotten laid off at this point,
Hmm.
it was very clear. And I even had a dream about it. A very, very vivid dream that stuck with me the entire next day, like the emotional residue of it. And
Wow.
it's hard to like ignore those intuitive nudges.
Oh
And
yeah.
I don't, yeah, and I don't think you should. So
Mm-mm.
yeah, it was becoming very clear to me that I wasn't just being paranoid, but I was like soon to be laid off. And so I just started devoting more like 30 minutes to an hour every single morning, taking the course and then implementing the action steps. And if I can speak to anyone right now who's you're at your job, you're worried you're going to get laid off, or you hate your job, you wish you would get laid off, whatever the case, anything in between. I think we can have this very like black or white thinking in entrepreneurship where you're either, 100% your business is sustaining you or you're 100% a W 2 employee. And I think the bridge between those two things for me was magic.
Mm.
That was where I learned all the skills that, regardless of what industry, what service I'm offering is going to serve me. Yeah. So in that journey, learning and implementing and actually doing the thing is where all the fruits are waiting.
Ooh, I love that story, and I know there's probably so many people listening who find themselves somewhere in that world. It's 2025 at the time we're recording this. There's a lot of uncertainty. I know even my husband is in, like, a professional situation where I think he's done freelancing before, he would like to do more, which is why I do think that our topic today too, as we spin into that, is gonna be so beneficial. But even just, like, that recognition of this really isn't secure. Like, this 9 to 5 working for someone else is never secure. And I think there's also a fear sometimes where it's like, okay, but freelancing is also not secure. Like, for you, was there fear? And what was the thing that kind of held you back? And maybe you mentioned this a little bit, but you'd seen the emails, you'd seen the course for a while. What made you finally decide, you know what? Like, this actually, instead of like, oh, I'll go back to law school, I'll do the more set thing that feels safe. What made this feel safe to you? Is it just that gnawing on your heart, that dream you had, and just that draw to it? And do you have any recommendations for somebody who maybe doesn't have such a profound experience to make that first step and say, okay, I'm learning the skill, I'm doing the thing, I've heard enough about it, it's time?
Yeah, I love that question. I think I felt so betrayed, strangely, by investing so wholeheartedly in, because I bought into that feeling of security, or else I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
have moved my family cross country right before I was about to have a baby and my husband was unemployed and et cetera, et cetera. And we're living in a very different market. I was living in the Manhattan market where, I mean, comparing that to like the rural outer area of New Orleans, the things that I was doing in Manhattan, I could get paid 2 to 3 times the amount of what I could make in New Orleans for it. And the cost of living isn't that much cheaper that it makes that big of a difference. So yeah, I think it was such a moment of emotional shock that it woke me up to the possibility of there being other realities. And so the thing in my mind that kind of made the copywriting thing, working from home, earning money, building your own business, magical internet money thing seem like a scam kind of dropped, because I was feeling so betrayed. I was like, this is a scam. This whole, we're family. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound too bitter, but I feel like I have to go there because if anybody's in this situation, I want them to be able to like deeply resonate enough that they can get it. But this whole feeling of like, your family, when you work with us, you're not just XYZ, you're family. And, your wedding comes and we give you a little bonus and we give you a little like gift for the baby. And, if you have to work during your PTO and during hours we're not paying you, it's cool because we're family, like that's what you do for
Mm.
family. You drop boundaries and you have like really toxic behaviors. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yep.
like, and whatever, like, no, I harbor no like bitterness or charge in my heart anymore. Like that was the catalyst that set me off to really change my life and get me on the path of my true potential. And I can see that now because I'm not worried about, Con Edison.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I love what you said, because I do think that there is such a perspective, and maybe even people listening right now who have been listening to several episodes, they're like right on that cusp where it does feel like this has to be too good to be true. And I've even had such an interesting experience where I experienced the too good to be true lifestyle, and then when things kind of like fell apart or became really challenging, my business kind of took a nosedive. I actually went into this, it was like the ignorance is bliss is one thing where it's like, okay, well, maybe it's a scam, but I don't know. Then it really felt like, oh my gosh, this is really unsafe too. And it took me a minute to build up that trust. And I think you do have to get to the point where which one is the most uncomfortable? Are you willing to keep pushing forward in the 9 to 5 space, working for somebody else? If for a time that feels safer and you just kind of need that, I think that's fine. But I think that there does have to be, I love the way you described it, just like the curtain has to fall to where you're like, okay, I'm no longer, and it's a perspective shift, right? I don't think it's, nothing outwardly changed. It was just your perspective and your comfort level changed where you're like, I'm willing to try anything else. I think that's the point every successful entrepreneur has to get to. And then it's what you do from there. It's, are you going to retreat back? Just like you kind of did, even in the professional sphere of like, oh, I
Yeah.
should have picked the different career path. You will
Mhm.
always wonder what if, and you just
Mhm.
have to continue forward on the path that you chose and let those evolutions happen. So I love that. And it reminded me of the book, which I don't even know if I finished, The Obstacle is the Way. Like this
Yes.
really frustrating moment you had was the way. Like it needed to happen that way in order for you to move forward and create something amazing. So you've been copywriting for how long? And like what has that looked like as you've evolved and grown the business? Obviously, you've been successful. So that work and that diligence and that investment paid off. I assume it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows though. Like what's that path been like?
No, and there's no arrival point either, unfortunately. Like, I'm even in a place right now where so I've been writing for copywriting, I guess, for at this point, a little like almost 3 years. I was doing some before that, but I didn't even know that it was called that, which is another thing. I'm so glad that people are actually learning. And I feel like also as a personal assistant, I did all the things all entirely by myself, and I never even knew to call it or value it in a certain way. So I want to say to people that, that knee jerk reaction that some of us might have to say, like, oh, I don't have this experience or knowledge or skill set. And the most devastating feeling that I had was being in that moment and being like, wow, I've been working since for money in whatever kind of capacity since I was 14. And I feel like I'm unqualified to do anything. And I got my
Wow.
undergrad degree. I went and got like a little bonus master's degree in theater, which was more like a dramaturgy kind of degree, and helping you understand like the scope of a play and the historical context and a lot of like storytelling. And yet, I found myself like researching how to become a dental assistant.
Oh, this is blowing my mind, Lisa, because you're like, there's some things that you're saying that resonate with my own personal experience and even my husband's. Because I
Mhm.
remember several years ago him literally being like, maybe I should go to dental school. And I'm like, what
Yeah,
are you talking about? And he comes from that
yeah,
theatrical background. It's like,
yeah.
what are we doing? Surely you have enough skills. We don't need to acquire new ones at this stage
Yes.
in our journey.
But this is something that I kind of habitually do anyway. Like one mantra that when I'm on it and I'm repeating it to myself works really well for me in my life is use what you have, because I'm so quick to go to Amazon, put the dumb thing in the cart, and then 2 weeks later I'm like, "Oh, I already had that thing or that thing but better or another
Mm,
version of it or whatever. I didn't need it." But we're so quick to look to external things to think that that degree, that whatever basket toy is going to solve something inside of us that because the scarier proposition seems to be we have everything inside of us to X, be
mm,
a successful entrepreneur, get out of debt, forge a new path professionally when you're facing a layoff. And it's a tough pill to swallow when you're in that place, and you can probably upon reflection appreciate it better, but there's so many opportunities there to the universe asking you like, hey, do you really want to double down on this path? Do you want to double down as an event manager, as an executive assistant? You've always loved writing. Don't you want to like see what that's about? Maybe write some more. And yeah, to your question, like despite having earning more, especially in this past calendar year, than I ever earned as a W-2 employee, I still haven't signed a client. I went November, November to like mid-January without signing a client. Um, and I'm still in a place where I understand that this skill of like pitching and understanding the connection point between what I have inside of me and what I see inside of you and what I have to offer that might help you, that in itself is the thing. That's the
mm.
end point. Not the well, for me at least at this stage, it's not the like, oh, I hit that $1 million mark and now I don't ever have to worry about where my next client is again. Like Alex Hormozy is wondering about where his next, whatever, hundreds of thousands of clients are coming next. Like, he's
Yeah.
paying money to make sure that that gravy train is going to keep running. So yeah, I guess like opening up that concept and understanding that these skills and the skills and knowledge that you attain become a part of you intrinsically in such a way that nobody can take it away from you.
Mm.
No job market, no client saying yes or no, no W-2 position going forward with you or not. And I am preaching for people to learn this skill, because whether you are going to stay in the W-2 world, which I think is like so valid for different points of your life, or balancing it with your partner, you have one, they don't, or not, and you're going freewheeling down this entrepreneurial path, which has luckily been so forged by people like you that it's not as confusing and magic internet money anymore,
Mm-hmm.
that you have this skill to be flexible in any situation. You keep your side hustle, which is so demeaning most of the time, going while
Mm-hmm.
you have that W-2. Or you're over here in the entrepreneurial world and you're like, you know what, things are drying up. I've been trying everything. Let me dip my toe into part-time, contractor, whatever kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I try to like eliminate that binary for myself so I don't get so freaked out by
Yeah.
when the well dries up or whatever.
I know. I think that's valuable. I heard Jasmine Star say this a while ago, and it was a little too late for us a little bit, because my husband, we started to have success in our business and we're like, we're good now, quit your job. And she had said something along those lines, like, keep your job until this, I think when you villainize one or the other and you don't look at it as parts of a great whole. And even,
Mhm.
here you hear several people who are coaching entrepreneurs say, you can literally always get another job. Like, you can go apply for other jobs. You don't have to fear that because you're quitting to pursue your entrepreneurial endeavors, that's it. And you're never rejoining corporate America again. Or you're never going to have a 9 to 5. And I think if we don't deal in those absolutes, then it just gives our brains the freedom to say, there's no pressure on this. Like, this is just a cumulative thing. We're just bringing all these pieces in. If there's a time when I need to work a little part-time, I'm even right now, like partnering with Millionaire University, some would consider this like a part-time job. It's a place where I can be creative. It's a place where I can connect and create really good content as I build my own businesses on the side too. Like, and that
Yeah.
creates safety and a foundation for me. And it's not absolute. It's not saying, because when I've done that, I've actually sabotaged more when I say, oh, if I just focus on this and
Yeah.
I can't have any distractions. And then it puts this pressure on my brain of like, okay, this is all you're allowed to do, and it has to
Yep.
succeed and it has to
Yep.
earn. So, oh my gosh, I love the direction this conversation has gone so far. And I know we've kind of opened the door a little bit to peek inside of talking about pitching. So I want to open it wide open, and let's just go into this more, because as you just said, you didn't close a client from November to mid-January, and I know that is the lifeblood of any service-based business, whether it's digital or in person. So what have you learned? I think that was a great principle, and just remove the pressure. Like,
Mhm.
don't for me, it's been like, don't put so much pressure on the people to buy from you. That's not where the earning is coming from. It's coming
Yeah.
through them. I'm sure
Mhm.
you would echo the same thing. So you're not like out there trying to fish for people, but give me a little bit more on like what you've learned and what you want to share with our listeners today about pitching and just the holistic approach that you have.
Awesome. Yeah. So the way that I've been thinking about it, I in earnest started pitching very heavily about a year ago. Before that, I was just kind of stumbling my way into, oh man, I went back to like read some of those early cold emails just to like, that like weird delight and like cringing at yourself. I don't
You
know.
can't
I
look
don't know.
away, but you just you want to love that version of yourself. You're like, thank you for getting through the icky parts. Now we're here.
Yes. Yes, like in a way, that person, I mean, feels like even braver than I am now,
Mm,
and it's like, she was freshly postpartum, getting over postpartum depression, facing a layoff, and emailing really big companies with massive marketing departments offering like general help for a blog. And oh, I just want to like squeeze her and be like, you are so freaking cute. And yes, keep going, you know?
Mhm.
But what I eventually sort of stumbled across, because that was the guidance I was given, is like, oh, aim high, because even these companies with these big, beautiful marketing departments, they all need help. Everyone needs help. And like, okay, but what specific deliverable? Oh, everyone needs a blog. Whatever. All that to say that that was really bad advice. But if I if I wouldn't have taken those steps, I wouldn't have come across like what actually is good advice,
Mhm.
which is two things: specificity and authenticity. If you don't have those two things, to what I have is like a really high standard for both of those things, don't even write the email.
Mm.
And that's not even just on an ethical level. It's also on a results level. When I look back at all the emails that I've sent, and my business got to where it was last year, being the highest revenue year ever in my life for me, just from cold emails. And
Mm.
but those two main keys, the specificity and the authenticity. First of all, and this is like becomes a lens that you can look at the entire world with. If there's an inner spark in you that lights up when you think about something, engage in something, talk about something, and if it's related to a service, a product, an influencer, a creator, whatever, you are already 99% more qualified than anyone to reach
Mm.
out to that business brand, whatever. The specificity component, if I don't have a very specific deliverable, like I checked their website and I saw that they don't have this, or a big thing with creators is overly relying on social media platforms and not having email lists. Then if I don't have something that specific to say, hey, I love this about your work, I've been a big fan of yours for a while, inside joke, I noticed you didn't have this or that. I would love to talk to you about incorporating that so you can better own your audience and not feel subject to the algorithm or whatever the case. Here's my Calendly, or whatever they always say. You start that first interaction with like a really low bar that just get
Mhm.
them to reply, say yes or no or whatever.
Wow. I love that. I mean, it makes me feel hopeful as a service provider and a business owner just to tap into that. I think it's a belief shift, right? I don't have to it's not my resume that I'm pitching. I have that. And I think this even goes back to what you were saying before of like everything is already inside of you, including that spark. Like you have the knowledge, you have the skills. You will always find reasons that you need more experience, more practice, more certifications, whatever that may be. But I think if you can recognize, like you said, that spark and that passion makes you 99% more qualified than most people. Like how much comfort does that give you? And that's just such a confidence boost to say, yeah, you're right. Like I actually do care. I'm not just doing this to get a client. I'm doing this because I genuinely am so excited about the thing that I do. And it doesn't have to be like I would eat, sleep, and breathe copywriting for the rest of my life. It's like, but this is, you really do find joy in working with a client and being able to sit there and write copy and help their business to grow. You see the big picture, like that excitement is such a game changer compared to people who are just like, all right, I have to fill my quota of pitching to as many people as I can. I don't really care about what I'm doing. I just need the money or I just need the client. I think that's really powerful. So, what do you recommend to someone who is maybe just starting out? You look back at old cringy. I know you're saying like there's the specificity and the authenticity. How can we help that authenticity to shine through? Do you recommend always being cold email? Do you recommend reaching out to people on social media, sending audio notes? Like, what have you found to be the most effective? And even in terms of, I know that different businesses, some really rely on attraction marketing. Like, I'm just going to put stuff out and have people reach out to me. What's your take on how we can do more of that outreach without it feeling like we're desperate? Or, I know that was kind of two questions. So first of all, how can we have more of that authenticity? What are some of the systems that you would recommend, or the platforms? And then, second thing, just like how can we overcome that fear of feeling like we're desperate in pitching?
Yeah, the authenticity thing is at the heart of it is so profound. It's kind of like learning to trust your inner guidance again, or for the first time ever. It's about like, I think we're so used to, especially in an entrepreneurial journey of like, it's so much strategy, and adding up the numbers and doing the math and like, okay, whatever, give them a mid-tier package and a slightly higher package because, whatever worst case scenario, they pick the package that you wanted them to pick anyway. Like there's so much strategic, like
Mhm.
cognitive load that goes into being an entrepreneur. And then you really earn those stripes when you do that too. It's like hard won experience. But I feel like there's a part of the journey. I mean, when I talk about it, it's going to sound woo woo. So that might make some people just like kind of turn off to it altogether. But I would say be open to understanding that you have a guidance system inside of you that is perhaps even more powerful than your strategic brain. And that guidance system, that little spark, that like inner dog wag, the tail wag of like, ooh, butterfly in your stomach, whatever it is telling you that is your body's way of telling you, like, yes, yes. And that it might not be your body saying, like, yes, they're going to sign a $10,000 contract in the next 30 days and it's going to answer all your prayers. But it might just be telling you, um, yeah, working with coaches, that's what you love. Yeah, do more of that. Yeah, go down. It's just breadcrumbs. It's just that
Mm.
compass to tell you go there. So that's what I would say about the authenticity, that trying to tune into your body a little bit more, tuning into that small voice inside that is guiding you the whole way, that you don't often realize that you're walking alongside.
Mm.
um, that will lead you to, and then it, it is a pure numbers game thing of like, you spread the seeds and you spread the seeds and you spread the seeds. And to your point, I don't, even though most of my revenue last year came from cold emails, it didn't stop me from, I mean, I'm not the best on social media, so don't go back and look at like my recent post history or whatever, but it didn't stop me from networking on LinkedIn, making my blog posts, sending out emails to my own lists, always having like a little magnet that I made for a retreat that I went to that was like, magnetize your audience to you, in my back pocket to be like, oh,
Mm.
yeah, here. But I think because I was so in spreading seed mode, I wasn't like, are you going to do it? Are you, are you going to hire me? Are you going to bite? Because it's the spirit is like the spreading of the seeds. The spirit
Mm.
isn't like, okay, I just planted that seed. Where is it? Like, where's that sprout? Um, so I think just from a strategic standpoint, like pure numbers. And I'm sure some people can figure out maybe like a better intuitive way for themselves where they're like, hey, you know what? Like, all these people on Instagram are people I really vibe with. And I feel like I get so much energy back when I go out there and spread some love. So I'm going to keep doing that. And that's their inner guidance that they're reconnecting to. That's telling them, like, yeah, there's opportunities here. And it, I guess, I guess the logical linear brain wants to know exactly what those opportunities are and when they're going to come. And that's
Mhm.
the tough part. And that's the like ever zen exercise of business and life,
Yeah.
is that we don't have that ultimate final control of like when that happens. But you always have control over the steps you take, how often you take them, and the integrity with which you execute all of these things.
Mm.
And trusting that your integrity, the value you bring, the innate value that you have inside of you that no one can take away from you, is a chord that's resonating that other people are going to hear and respond to.
Yeah. There's something that requires surrender for sure in all of this, and it doesn't even matter whether that's a faith thing, it's a surrender to God, it's a surrender to just whatever. But, like, I think along the lines of what you were saying, it's such a hard concept to convince people of, you just have to feel it and live it. But it's like you want to set your vision, you want to set your goals, you want to know what it is that you're working towards. And obviously, you do the work to acquire the skill or deepen the skill. And then when it comes time to maybe like you've made the pitch or you've posted the thing, it's there's so much power in detaching from the result and not concerning yourself with this linear how of, okay, well, I contacted 5 people. One of them is supposed to, because based on these odds and based on what I've been taught, one is supposed to say yes. Which one is it going to be? And I kept thinking like the watch pot never boils. Like you can't just sit there and be stuck in the cognitive where it's like, well, the numbers are supposed to do this. If you stay in that zone and you stay in that frequency of the people that you're wanting to call in, I have done so many things on the wrong end of this where it's like, if I don't have a guarantee, if I don't have a big enough list, if I don't feel like this is going to succeed, then I'm not going to put it out there. And thankfully, I have good people in my life who are like, what are you doing? Like, you build it, you put your thing out there. The right people are going to be called to it. The right people are going to find it.
Mm-hmm.
Or even with pitching, I think there's a level of ego that you have to leave on the shelf because them saying no is not about you, right? And it's not this aggressive, like hardcore, oh, I'll just, ask as many people as I can. And I'm going to just love getting no's because I'm one step closer to the yeses. I think that's a valuable strategy sometimes, but I think it's more like just releasing that out there and saying, who am I helping by not telling them what I do? Like, who am I helping by holding all of this because I want to wait till the pitch is perfect or the messaging is perfect on the sales page? You won't even get to that point where it's perfect until you've done it a whole bunch of times. So speak to that a little bit from your
Yeah.
perspective, like with the ego and the fear of even pitching the messy beginning as you're starting to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, that's so beautifully put. And if you can try to add some levity to it wherever you can, to just be like, it is kind of objectively funny. Like, I even look back on this past year, like, like I keep saying, very successful year, great. I can't tell you how many people I pitched my heart out to, and it didn't work. And
Mm.
that hurt, and I guess I'm finding it kind of funny now because I did so many repetitions of it that I can't even like really be precious about it. I'm like, oh yeah, like it almost feels like remembering another lifetime. I'm like, oh yeah, remember? Like, I'm like, remember back in like, 80, the spring of 82, and you thought this YouTuber was going to move forward with you, and you met on a call with them and you talked to them for an hour, and then um, and part of what I'm revealing here too, by like kind of telling an offshoot of a real story, is that I've been in such this delicate balance of like, how much do you give and how much do you kind of like withhold behind a paywall? But there were so many pitches that I kind of had my heart set on that I couldn't help it, because I really did care about them. I really did want to help and support in the way that I knew that I was uniquely positioned to do. And our rendezvous was like almost there and then didn't. And then the way that people can behave is like atrociously disappointing. It's inhumane the way that people just ghost without a thought. And I'm almost envious of people who can kind of like live like
Detach,
that.
that
Because
cannot care.
yeah, because like I show up 10 minutes late to a dinner with a friend and I'm like crippled with feeling how irresponsible that was, or, whatever the case. So I think it's just like really opened up my perception and like kind of eliminating this like binary thinking of like bad guys, good guys, and, this or that, or, and again, just through the reps in doing it, it's hard to take it seriously because I've already forgotten. And I think part of this too, it reminds me of like auditions as an actor. Like you go in, you lay your heart on the line, and then you leave, and it's like you have a memory wipe at that audition. It's like it never happened. Or like blind dating or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's a million analogies that people can insert here, but it's like, but I would urge that to not stop people from, because when you do pitch and when you do choose yourself, whatever you want to call it, stand up for yourself, pick yourself, fight for yourself. You are doing something for yourself that, regardless of the outcome, is so spiritually potent, and you keep it. You get to keep that. And I think that's the thing I'm trying to articulate about, like, it's not necessarily about what you get, but who you become.
Mm.
And then when you become that thing, regardless of that hotshot creator getting back to you or not, regardless of you meeting your goals for this month or not, regardless of if you earned more as an entrepreneur this year than you earned doing W-2 last year or not, you are that person.
Mm.
And it becomes you on a cellular level, whatever those traits or skills are. Fortitude, humbleness, but like in a really powerful way,
Mm-hmm.
like people who are powerful, but they know their strength and they respect it and they don't yield it against people who are in a less advantaged position than them. Intuition, passion, insightfulness, joy, creativity, because being an entrepreneur it demands your creativity, not just like in your deliverables, but like in the way you think.
Yeah.
And the lens that I have now, my friend laughed at me. We were meeting up for my birthday in December, and I started pitching her on something, not even like, you be my client, but it was an idea that I thought she kind of suggested she'd be interested in following. And I started like hyping it up so much. And she was like, you can't stop pitching. Like, if you're breathing, you're pitching me on following this dream, going to do this thing, seeing it through. So it almost, I started calling it, it's so corny, but pitch your heart into it. It
Mm.
started becoming this like kind of ethos of like a passionate, open, creative way of seeing the world.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start looking at the world that way, it's like, because, it's like the reticular activating system thing of like, whatever you look for, you see. Red
Yeah.
cars, dead ends, bad boyfriends, or potential clients, or potential rendezvous, conversations, friends, ideas, scripts, stories to tell, projects to do, like funny little skits to record.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it like revives our like soul or spirit in a way that it's been flatlined in a lot of instances from
Yeah.
the daily grind and just fitting into society or whatever it is.
Hmm. I could listen to you talk all day. Like, I am just so stunned sometimes at the people that we have on. And it's not even just your level of competence, but your level of connection to that competence and just the holistic, the whole you approach to everything that you're saying. It's something you can only acquire through lived experience, and it's wisdom, right? It's not just knowledge. This is the difference. You are a woman full of wisdom on this show who has lived it and experienced it. And I resonate so much with what you're saying because I feel like you're lucky if you can get to that point. And you know you're doing it right if you get to that point where it does you embody it in everything that you do. I feel like for me, it's that connector piece. Like, I can't help but connect people together. I can't help
Yeah.
probably inherently pitching too, because I pitch people their own dreams all the time because I just believe in it so much. And
Yeah.
I've even at times wondered, like, why you hear what people say about you in positive ways. And I've always been like, why are people, I don't get it. Like, what am I doing that's making them drawn to this? Or what am I magnetically calling in? I don't really know. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not logically, cognitively doing this, but I think you just explained so well what that is. And you just become the frequency of the very thing that you want to create. And it's
Yeah.
less about like, okay, learning and planning and strategic. There's places for the strategy. But I think when you get into this where you embody it, that is where things just happen beyond your comprehension. And I have no doubt hearing you talk that this 2025 is probably going to be a much bigger year than 2024. And I even dare say, like, probably not even doing the exact same thing. I think copywriting has probably been a season and something
Yeah.
to get you to here. And you're just on that progression like most entrepreneurs do. It's like, man, I didn't know when I learned and I took this copywriting course that I was going to become really amazing at pitching and teaching people how to like be and embody the thing that they're selling. But you are so gifted in this. And it's been so cool to hear you explain it from the heart and have language to apply to that. Cause I think it's sometimes really hard to describe the things you have, but you've done a beautiful job of that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I heard you talking about your quizzes and the funnels and stuff, and when I heard that, I was like, "Oh man, she's so, like, effortlessly fluent in," because I came through this by such a DIY way as a copywriter
Mhm.
and marketer and strategist that I still, like, don't really feel like I have all the language for that kind of stuff, so hearing you talk about it, I feel like you anyone who listens to you feels smarter as a result. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's so
Of just
sweet.
listen,
Yeah.
right, like, there's people and it's I think it's what you articulated. It's because of your frequency, it's because of what you embody, and that is the true definition when people talk about, you shine your light so other people can shine theirs. That is that in action. It's
Mhm.
you having all of that lived experience and knowledge and, I mean, frankly, just, like, high IQ inside of you, and then putting that frequency out and other people in training to that frequency. And just like that, Dr. Joe Dispenza shows this thing at one of his retreats where it's like entrainment and it's like this pendulum swinging and like the balls are out of order. But if you give it long enough, they all begin to entrain to each other and chaos goes into order.
Mm.
So it's like the way the, I don't know, like physics way of wanting to organize order from chaos.
Wow. I love brain science. I love Joe Dispenza. You and I are gonna be best friends after this interview, just warning you. You've now come into my orbit, I'm in yours, and it's you're not gonna get rid
I
of me.
mean, you're welcome. I love it. It's a pleasure. It's been really,
It's
really
so fun.
awesome talking to you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you as well. Okay, I hope everybody's enjoyed this as much as we have enjoyed engaging with each other. Like, I know sometimes we can really get into the nitty-gritty of strategy and building and so many cool different business models, and I would even speak to I want to just I forgot to say this, like, I was like you, a copywriter and didn't know it. I had a way with words, I loved writing, and I was doing these quizzes, right? Like, I was so caught up in the methodology that I was like, "Oh, I'm a copywriter." And it was actually talking to Tara, one of the hosts and starters of the show, and she was like, "Why wouldn't people pay for that? Like, they don't wanna have to create that themselves, and it's an asset." And I was like, "I'm an asset." And it changed everything for me, and I think when it goes from the skill set to realizing the skill set becomes an asset because of all the compilation of life experience and just your perspective and that natural raw talent that you have applied to a tool, like, that will shift everything. So, for all of our listeners, I do hope you've heard this. Like there, you do need to start with something, like acquire that skill, lean into something. Don't feel like you have to go chase a path that's completely out of alignment with who you are. But once you find that, this is the episode for you to come back and re listen to over and over because this right here, the principles that you and I have discussed, Lisa, they are the key to success. Like these are the foundational things. There's so much more than just the art of pitching that we've discussed layered into this conversation. And so anyway, if people want to come learn pitching from you, maybe you're going to talk about that more, or they just want to see what you're doing in copywriting. Maybe they're looking for a talented copywriter. They felt that frequency connection with you today. Where can they connect with you?
Yeah. So Lisa Fernandez agency on all the platforms, my website, LinkedIn. I don't really post that much on Instagram, but you can find me there. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. We'll link to everything in the show notes. Thank you again, Lisa. It's been such a fun conversation. You're so talented.
Kirsten, thank you so much for letting me go there. And I felt like I could with you because your knowledge, experience, and just like ability to contain so much depth and breadth helped me understand that I could begin to articulate these things that aren't completely entirely fully formed yet, but they're important enough ideas that I don't hear spoken about enough. So, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for setting the set for that to happen.
Anytime. Of course. I'm so happy that this could be a springboard. Can't wait to hear more from you.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks again, you guys. Thanks for tuning in.